Great to be with all of you, as always.
So this is our gathering music, Shad.
Echo. Echo, 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 echo. Are we ready, everyone? Are you ready, Seth?
When night is falling, when fear is coming, still you're calling me. When faith is lost and I hope exhausted, well, you will be my strength.
When my mind says I'm not good enough, God, you're enough for me. I've decided I'm not giving up, 'cause you won't give up on me. You won't give up on me. Your love is holding on and it won't let go. I feel it breaking out just like an echo. Your love is holding on and it won't let go. I feel it breaking out just like an echo in my soul.
In every season, you keep repeating promises to me. Now there's no stopping what you have started until it is complete.
When my mind says I'm not good enough, God, you're enough for me. I've decided I'm not giving up, 'cause you won't give up on me. You won't give up on me. Your love is holding on and it won't let go. I feel it breaking out just like an echo. Your love is holding on and it won't let go. I feel it breaking out just like an echo in my soul. When my mind says I'm not good enough, God, you're enough for me. I've decided I'm not giving up, 'cause you won't give up on me. You won't give up on me. Your love is holding on and it won't let go. I feel it breaking out just like an echo. Your love is holding on and it won't let go. I feel it breaking out just like an echo. Oh, your love is holding on and it won't let go. I feel it breaking out just like an echo. Oh, your love is holding on and it won't let go. I feel it breaking out just like an echo in my soul.
Good morning and welcome to worship. Welcome to Elizabethtown Church of the Brethren, where we practice peace, service, and openness to all. A couple of special welcomes that I want to give to people. One is for those of you who are here, especially for the Golden Age dinner, which is happening right after worship today. If you're a Golden Ager, I think that's 70 and up. Is that right?
I think so.
If you're a Golden Ager, then, and you forgot to put in your RSVP and you are here anyway, you're welcome to come. We hope you might join us downstairs after worship in the fellowship hall for a special time of celebrating those of you who are at that golden age. The other special welcome I want to give is for those of you who are watching online this morning. We know that we have people across the country and sometimes even across the world who are joining us online, and we're glad that you have joined us as well. So welcome to worship, wherever you are participating in worship from this morning. Glad to have you. An announcement?
Yeah?
You look unusually warm today,
I
Pam.
think it feels good. It's chilly. It's fall.
I'm feeling like a hipster. This is how
You're
you
looking
wear
like a
your hat.
hipster.
The Church World Service is having a winter warmth campaign. And so you may have seen right outside the right side of the sanctuary doors here in the narthex to the right, there's a table that's taking gloves, hats, scarves, coats. Can you imagine if you moved to the United States and you moved somewhere that is located close to the equator? Winter is coming and you have no idea what it's like. You're going to need some warm clothes. And so this is an opportunity for us to share what we might have with others. So as I'm sure you, like my family, you're digging through, you're trying to figure out, you're pulling out those warm weather items. If you find that you have two and you need one, you know where to bring it. Next Sunday, it's the last Sunday, table right outside these doors. Hope you can do that.
Great way to make a difference.
Woo,
Yeah, warm.
heating up.
Good. Are there other announcements?
Nope.
I have one announcement.
Okay, go ahead.
You may have already seen that great big birthday card out in the lobby just outside the door here. We encourage you all to sign a happy birthday message, greeting to our brothers and sisters at Chickies Church of the Brethren, not far from here. They were the church that planted our church, so we have a special greeting we want to send to them, so make sure you sign that card. That would be great.
I think you should preach in those gloves. That's great.
You know, they fit really well, and they're kind of nice. All right. This morning, we're going to continue on our series, This Is Your Life. You know, as I was thinking who would be an interesting biblical character to look at, I thought of Rahab, because she ended up becoming a great person of God, and we know her in Scripture much of the time as Rahab the prostitute. And so I thought it would be kind of fun to get in her head a little bit as a woman and as a follower of Jesus. Her story is set in the context of Jericho, which is the city that fell to the Israelites as they were preparing to enter the Promised Land. So we'll hear more about that encounter. We welcome you to worship this morning. I invite you to take your hymnal, and we'll stand and we'll sing together.
Joyful, joyful, we adore thee, God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before thee, praising thee, their Son above. Melt the clouds of sin and sadness, drive the dark of doubt away. Giver of immortal gladness, fill us with the light of day. song of life.
Was joyful. I think one of the reasons that we drag ourselves out of bed on a wet morning like this morning is because we're ready for some joy. I also think one of the reasons that we drag ourselves out of bed or choose to come to worship is because we are ready for God to hold the mirror up to us and say, "This is your life. These are the blessings. These are the places where you might feel some gratitude this morning, right now." But that mirror also shows us some other things, where we might have stumbled, where we might be having a hard time, where we have not been following Jesus like we know we ought to. And then the mirror comes down, and there's God. And we know that we are forgiven, and we know that we are freed. We are freed to live life fully. Welcome to worship. Please pray with me. God, we thank you for the gift of life, and we thank you for that mirror. We thank you for the way that it shows us the joys, the blessings. We're also grateful for the way it shows us places where we can do better. God, thank you for your love, for our lives together and with you. Amen.
Good morning, good morning. How's everybody doing this morning? All right, good. So last week, this is your life. We're telling the story of our lives. We're thinking about how when you live your life, there's all these different stories and all these different things that happen. We're talking about some Bible characters. There was this old show on television that used to tell the life story of individuals. And I know for some of you, you haven't been on the earth as long as some other people. But that doesn't mean that you don't already have stories and things to tell. So last week, I don't know if anyone did this, but last week I encouraged you to go home and ask a family member, a parent, a grandparent, a story about you. And maybe that was an opportunity for you to hear a little bit of a story about yourself. Now, one of the things that's interesting about our life stories, is that they're complicated. They're not always a straightforward story of all these it's just birthday parties and Christmases and that kind of thing. There are lots of things that happen in between. Sometimes we get into disagreements with our siblings. Sometimes people get sick. Sometimes you may hurt yourself. Sometimes you may hurt others. And our lives are complicated, and we try our best to strive to live in the way of Jesus, but there are times in our lives where we fall short of that. And in the story that we're going to be hearing today, we have a complicated person with lots of different things that have happened in their life. And I want to tell you a very quick story. When I was maybe a little older than you, I'd like to think that I was a good kid. I was a fun kid. I think my parents would say that I was a good kid. Teachers and stuff would say that I was a high-energy student is probably the term that they would use. But overall, I was a good kid. But I really liked to make people laugh. And there were times where I would, in order to get my friends to laugh, that unfortunately, I would maybe do something that wasn't nice to someone else. And so there were specific times in my life when I was younger that there were things that I would have done to other people that weren't very nice. Pointing out something about someone to get other people to laugh. And it took some time to realize that just because I was making some other people laugh, which made me feel good, it was important to take the time to think about how that was making those other people feel. And so there were a couple times that I did those things, and I'm not proud of it. But those that happened. That's a part of my story. It's a part of who I was and learning from that who I've become. And so while maybe in your life there are different things that you've done, maybe mistakes you've made, it's important to remember that there's always the opportunity for us to make those things better, to find those people to ask for forgiveness, to work on ourselves, to think about the ways that we can do a better job at following Jesus. So what I wanted to share with you this morning is that even when you mess up, even when there are times that things don't go the way that you want it to, either someone's mean to you or maybe you're mean to someone else, there's always opportunity to grow and learn from that. And you are more than just your worst mistake that you might make. But it's important to always work towards trying to be the best person that we can possibly be and to look to Jesus as that example for ourselves. But our stories are complicated. And remember, you're telling your story right now. Every day, you're making new stories, new relationships. Maybe someday you'll be a part of a show that says this is your life. All right, you guys can head on back.
I don't know if you've noticed, but some mornings you might see me up on the bench there, and I'm on my phone. I'm definitely not checking my fantasy football team to see who's playing that day. What I am doing, in all truthfulness, is I'm interacting with those who are watching online. I don't know if you know this, every Sunday now, our worship service is live. And after it goes live, then it gets posted to our YouTube page where you can watch it over and over and over again, as many times as you want. Why are you laughing? Every Sunday we have, 7, 8, 9, sometimes 15 people who are joining us in worship from wherever they're at. When we initially started this ministry, we thought, well, maybe this would be good for people who are wintering down in Florida. Hi, Jim. Hi, Dick. We thought also maybe it would be good for people who are in a retirement community, may not be able to make it out, or who are caring for a loved one on a Sunday morning. Hi, Rosine. Hi, Paul. Hi, Donna. We never thought, though, that we would be getting the kind of traffic that we are. We never thought that, I've heard some interesting stories. We never thought that there would be people, a young adult recently said, hey, I saw you in worship the other Sunday. And I said, wait a minute, don't you live in Michigan? He said, yeah, I wanted to tune in and show my girlfriend what my home congregation is like. We never thought that. I heard a story a couple weeks ago of a couple of women who were down in Virginia visiting some friends for the weekend. They had woken up early, woken up early to come back to worship, to make it to worship, but they got stuck in this massive traffic jam on I-81. They didn't miss worship, though. It was awesome. They pulled out their smartphones, and they were part of worship, sitting there in the car in the traffic jam. It's amazing. We have 148 videos at this YouTube channel, E-Town Church, Elizabethtown Church of the Brethren. All you got to do is go to YouTube, plug that in. You'll go to our channel, and there's 148 videos there. We have, most of the worship services get about 50 to 60 views. And some of them get even more. The jazz service that we had a couple of weeks ago, that shot up to number 6 on the list. Up the ranks, like good music should, right? It's got about 200 views. Our most watched video has over 1,000 views. So this is a way that we are not only sharing with our congregation, our community of faith that we thought we would. It's sharing in ways that we never thought that would happen. It's also reaching out to people across the country and across the world. And so as we think about how we make our resources available, I wanted to draw this to your attention. I wanted to thank our sound and video people who make this happen every single week. Literally behind the scenes, putting in hours and hours. We actually have a need. If you think that you might be interested in this, even if you have interest and don't have any training, they will train you. It can be done. It's actually, even I can do it. I wanted to thank them. I also wanted to thank people who have been so generous in this congregation's past, who have, it's our endowment funds that enabled us to buy some of the equipment that were part of significant upfront costs to make this happen. And so we thank them. And I also want to thank all of you, all of us, who give regularly, because if not for this kind of giving, we wouldn't be able to have this kind of ministry that reaches so far and wide. And so this morning, as our ushers come and they gather our offering, I invite you to think about that. Let some of this soak in. How are our ministries impacting the world? How does our time make a difference for how those ministries impact the world? And how do our dollars do the same? Thank you. As a community of faith, we share our blessings and our concerns with one another. One of the things that I neglected to mention just now as I was talking about streaming is that we do mute this part of the service in the interest of privacy. If you're sharing in worship, if we're sharing, you can share freely knowing that that will not be broadcast online, so to speak, so don't worry about that piece of it. What we usually do is we just show a picture of the chancel area, and then the feed comes back on when we do the spoken prayer. So just a note there for you. If you do have a joy or concern that you'd like to share, I welcome you to come forward so that you can do so with the congregation. God, our lives together contain one meta story and also many, many individual stories. Many of the stories that we have heard this morning in our prayer time are filled with pain. Bodies that are aging, bodies that are broken and in need of healing. Lives that have been shattered. Communities that have been targeted. God, we seem to have a hate problem that is festering in the soul of our nation right now. That's one story. That's one set of stories. Perceived slights, lost jobs, politicians and parties who seek to gain power by capitalizing on the misery of others. But God, there's another story to tell. These are our lives. What will we do with them? This morning we ask this, God. Guide us to live in your ways of peace and righteousness. Help us to seek the common good. Lead us to make connections even with those whom we know we disagree. Help us to refuse to ascribe intent to the actions of our neighbors. Help us in constructing bridges. And when our neighbor has been lured into the dark path of hatred and violence, we remember that the antidote to hatred is love, active love. Love that is willing to stand up to evil, love that is willing to suffer, love that strives to win the opponent to the way of love itself, rather than to destroy. This is Jesus' way. Love that is not simple, easy, or without hardship. But it is another story to tell. It is a story that has hands held out, where refugees are sheltered, where families are reunited, where life is expressed as art, and where communities of faith live in harmony. God, give us the courage of Rahab and the compassion of Jesus. Amen.
Well, I was really excited when we chose this series for the fall, our take on This Is Your Life. During the early days of TV, it was a popular reality show in which the host would surprise famous people in unlikely places and then take them through a retrospective of their lives in front of an audience, including special appearances by colleagues, friends, and family. Since it did air almost 50 years ago, I thought might be helpful to actually watch an episode. So I went to the YouTube, as my colleagues like to say, to see if I could find a clip of This Is Your Life. And lo and behold, there it was. A show from 1971. And the guests of honor were Richard and Karen Carpenter. I love the Carpenters. I had their 33 1/3 LPs and listened to them until they were too scratched to listen to anymore. With Karen's smooth contralto vocals and Richard's skills at composition, they put words to music that spoke to a generation. Ralph Edwards, host of This Is Your Life, surprised Karen and Richard with people from their past. They each spoke from backstage, sharing a memory, then revealing their identity as they came out from behind the curtain for a reunion of cheers, handshakes, and hugs as they reminisced and celebrated the life and accomplishments of this young brother and sister duo. Until it was all said and done, there were 12 people, including their first piano teacher, their high school band director, a manager, a radio personality, and yes, even mom and dad. Folks who had been intimately involved with the Carpenters at some point on their journey and had helped them to superstardom. And as I thought about who would be an interesting Bible character to take a look at, retrospectively at his or her life, I thought of Rahab, a superstar in her own right. So, Rahab the prostitute, this is your life. Now, more about that prostitute part in a moment. Rahab appears only 3 times in the New Testament. She's on 3 lists, 3 very important and significant lists. For women to be named at all was virtually unheard of, so we can see how truly noteworthy her inclusion was. In the opening chapter of Matthew, Rahab appears in the genealogy of Jesus. This genealogy has very special meaning to the Jews of that day, who had been waiting a long time for the Messiah to appear, who was to be a direct descendant of King David, fulfilling the Old Testament prophecies about the Messiah's lineage. And here in the very middle of this genealogy of Jesus is Rahab, one of only 4 women to appear at all on the list. In Hebrews 11, she's included in the Faith Hall of Fame. In verse 31, we read, "By faith Rahab the prostitute did not perish with those who were disobedient, because she had received the spies in peace." Joshua himself, the leader of the Israelites, didn't even make that list. And in James 2, Rahab is commended for her actions. In verse 25, we read, "Likewise," thank you. "Likewise, was not Rahab the prostitute also justified by works when she welcomed the messengers and sent them out by another road? For just as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is also dead." She is remembered for both faith and actions, a complete integration, a wholesome embodiment of a deeply rooted faith. So, what is the story of Rahab, this prostitute who lived in Jericho? Found in the book of Joshua, it is really the story of her father's house and her family's survival that seems to rest on her very shoulders. As many have surmised over the centuries, she may have chosen the livelihood of a prostitute, as one commentary called her Madam Rahab. Or some commentaries have suggested that she was an innkeeper, that there's only one letter difference in the original language between the word for prostitute and the word for innkeeper, although innkeepers didn't have the greatest reputation either. It might have been lost in translation. Or perhaps it was poverty that forced her into prostitution. She may have been used and abused, a victim in a society rampant with injustices. We really don't know for sure her situation. What we do know is that Rahab was on the margins of society. In fact, her living on the city wall, she lived at the very boundary of the inside and the outside. Rahab, like the rest of Jericho, had heard about the Israelites. Their reputation had preceded them, and she had been touched by the reports of this God of the Israelites. And so enter in the spies, sent ahead by Joshua to check it all out. In an effort to avoid undue attention at the city gate as they left, and to prevent being caught by the authorities, they sought refuge in Rahab's house, where it was commonplace for men to come and go. On her roof, she hid them among flax stalks until it was safe for them to report back to Joshua in return for saving their lives. They promised to save Rahab and her family when they returned to destroy Jericho. From Joshua 2. Before they went to sleep, She, Rahab, came up to them, the spies, on the roof, and said to the men, I know that the Lord has given you the land, and that dread of you has fallen on us, and that all the inhabitants of the land melt in fear before you. For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites that were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed. As soon as we heard it, our hearts melted, and there was no courage left in any of us because of you. The Lord your God is indeed God in heaven above and on earth below. Now then, since I have dealt kindly with you, swear to me by the Lord that you in turn will deal kindly with my family. Give me a sign of good faith that you will spare my father and mother, my brothers and sisters, and all who belong to them, and deliver our lives from death. The men said to her, Our life for yours. If you do not tell this business of ours, then we will deal kindly and faithfully with you when the Lord gives us the land. Willing to risk it all, Rahab must also have been very courageous in order to protect these enemy spies whom she believed to be on a godly mission, and then to strike a deal with them. She was committing treason. To hide these foreigners on her roof when the king's men were pounding on her door, and then to send the pursuers packing in the wrong direction, was a daring act, to say the least. And imagine the anxiety when the Israelites marched around that city and the walls began to shake and crumble. All the while, Rahab and her clan remained inside their home, perched atop the swaying walls. Even the most robust of the Canaanites were running for their life. But Rahab courageously remained and trusted in God until the spies returned and led her and her family outside the city to safety. Rahab's days as a prostitute were over. According to the genealogy in Matthew, she became the wife of Prince Salmon, who might even have been one of the spies that appealed to her for aid. She became the mother of Boaz, who married Ruth, and their son Obed bore Jesse, the father of King David, through whose line is traced Jesus the Messiah. Rahab the prostitute, this is your life, and what a life it was. What an inspiration is this woman who rose above her circumstances in life, whether of her own choosing or the lot she was cast. She took control of the situations before her, and she grew to be a woman of deep faith and great courage who made a difference in the world. We all have things in our past, poor choices and decisions that we've made, times we've messed up, times we've regretted what we've done, unfortunate events that have left us wounded, disappointed, and lost. Rahab did not let her past define her, and we do not need to be defined by our past. When we get to the end of our rope, when we're feeling stuck or discouraged or ashamed or hopeless, we have one another to help each other, to lean on, to love, and to help carry the load. And we have a God of new beginnings, a God who makes all things new, like the choir sang, a God who helps us to rise above our circumstances. Today is a new day, and we are inspired by the deep faith and the great courage of Rahab the prostitute. She gives us a lot to think about. And I've been thinking, too, about the carpenters, because there's a twist in their story, too. Just 12 years after the episode of This Is Your Life was filmed, Karen died tragically at the age of 32 from heart failure due to anorexia nervosa. It was a shock to the world, a young, talented life with so much ahead of her cut short. There are no guarantees in life. None of us knows the number of our days left on this earth. Regardless of our age, our health, our circumstances, our lot in life, what we all have in common is that we have today. And so we ask ourselves, am I grounded in God? Am I living faithfully today, right here and right now? Are we living faithfully today? As we are reminded in Scripture, yesterday is behind us, tomorrow will take care of itself, and we have the gift of today. How might we, like Rahab the prostitute, deepen our faith? We too can claim with Rahab, the Lord our God is indeed in heaven above and on earth below. What courageous acts is God calling us to in this time and in this place? These are our lives, and this is our life together. We need one another to encourage and to help one another, that our faith might grow even deeper and our acts courageous. We may not be hiding any spies on our rooftop under flax stalks. Or are we? Serving with children's disaster services, ministering to families in Florida in times of devastating crisis and loss. That looks a lot like the courage of Rahab. Being a voice for and a support to those who are vulnerable, the displaced, immigrants, the homeless, even right here in our own community. That looks a lot like the courage of Rahab. Serving as a bold minority voice without apology in our denomination and district. That looks a lot like the courage of Rahab. Embarking on a capital campaign, which was approved just 1 week ago, to explore the possibility of an updated and expanded facility to carry out our ministries and community service into the future. That looks a lot like the courage of Rahab. To love even our enemies, speaking kindly and respectfully with those whom we fundamentally disagree. That looks a lot like the courage of Rahab. Facing life's most difficult moments, drawing strength and grace from sisters and brothers who will weep with us, pray with us, and who love us. That looks a lot like the courage of Rahab. Crying out for peace in a culture of violence. That looks a lot like the courage of Rahab. And so we join our voices with our sister Rahab the prostitute as we proclaim, the Lord our God is indeed God in heaven above and on earth below. May it be so. Here I am, Lord. Here we are, Lord. We are followers of Jesus, and this is our life. May we be a people of deep faith, like Rahab the prostitute, and may we be a people of great courage. Let us go in peace.